Zoo-wee mama, how's it going, everybody? I am joined here once again with my very good friend Tuccrr, and we're going to be going over a tier list for two-cost cards, all of the two-cost cards in Marvel Snap. Tuccrr, how are you doing today?
Well, I am doing absolutely fantastic. So glad to be back for another tier list. Oh, this is going to be so freaking lit. I'm excited.
Yeah, our first one was solid. I even posted it on the Marvel Snap competitive Reddit after, and people were like,
Ooh.
"That's a dang good list." They had very few things that they would change. So I think we made a great list. We balanced each other out, going back and forth. Just for all the viewers, we are ranking cards. I'm using the website Tier Maker, by the way, and we are ranking cards from S to F tier. S tier is going to be cards that just produce insane value. These are cards that if you get, they're just game winners often. They'll see play in a lot of decks or maybe just in one or two top meta decks, but again, they can win you games, insane value, borderline OP. We would not be surprised if they get nerfed. They're just
Mm-mm.
insane. A tier is just the gold standard. These cards are great, good value, see play in the meta or most metas, even if not at the exact moment. They're just great cards. B tier is cards that are good. You look at them, they're good cards, they're solid, usually not game winning plays,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just decent. C tier is okay, that's a bit questionable. There's probably replacements for this. It's just pretty weak or it doesn't see play in any strong decks. And then F tier, it's just a card that's just horrible. There's really no need to ever play it, and we really hope it gets buffed. Okay, I'm sure we're gonna say some F tier cards, and someone out there is gonna be like, "I play this card," and you don't have to ever play these cards. They're just bad. Okay, they're horrible. I'm gonna go through alphabetically, and we will start off. And alphabetically, the two cost cards actually start off pretty weak.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead. I'll show the description of each card as I go through it. Let's go ahead and start with Adam Warlock. Shout out to this awesome Flaviano variant. This artwork is the best thing about the card, in my opinion. Tuccrr, where do you think Adam Warlock goes on the tier list? It's a rough start.
It really stinks because how just amazing this is of a character. And I mean, what you can do if you're winning a lane, you draw an extra card. If that's cool, you draw two cards in a turn. But you do not see this card in play really often, even in Mr. Negative, which is probably
Yeah.
his best fit, or if you were to C3 with Bast, but
Mm-hmm.
still. Well, and it's good. It's a good ability, don't get me wrong. But
Yes.
it just doesn't work right now.
Yes, I completely agree. I'm going to say he goes in F tier. And, the reason is it's yeah, drawing a card seems so good. But getting him to work, committing to him is tough. If you draw him later, he's literally useless. He's a 2-0.
Yep.
And if there was a time where he was going to be good, it was going to be before Nico Minoru came out. Because she costs one, and she can destroy something to draw you two cards. And you don't have to be winning a lane like she just does. Adam Warlock is a card that you always want to work, and it just never does.
No.
Is essentially how that works. So I agree. I'm going to say Adam Warlock is F tier. There's no reason to ever play him. Even, Cerebro negative, like you mentioned, there's better
No.
cards. Okay,
Get
let's
that
move
pixel.
on. Um, Sorry, there's a moment of silence for our fallen soldier, America Chavez. She used to be
Mm.
great, my favorite card. I inked her, and now I don't play her. It's very sad. Well, I think, where do you think she is, Tuck? This one always makes me sad.
Uh, um, I think she's probably D tier. I think her
Or
giving
low,
you
low
your
C,
next
I guess. We're
or
skipping.
or
Then C
or
to F.
lows. Oh yeah, C to F. Sorry, low C tier. I don't think. I mean, I would love for her to change again. But plus adding +2 to a card is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like something you're gonna put into every deck like you used to put her into every deck.
Uh
But
huh.
I think low C probably.
Yeah, I completely agree. She becomes a 2/5, which isn't great value. It is random, but there's some synergies with Howard, with Sebastian Shaw. If we see Surfer come into the meta, and even some future cards. So I agree. She's C tier. Definitely nowhere near her old power level as a 6 cost card, but not completely useless. All right,
Mm-mm.
and I think we're about to roll up on another card that was just nerfed. Man, these 2 cost cards have taken a beating these past couple months. I tell you what. Angela is now a 2/2 base stats that only gets +1 after you play a card here. So if you play Angela and you play 3 cards on her, she's just a 2/5. You put in all that work, she becomes a 2/5. Even if you move Jeff, she's a 2/6. She used to be A or S tier pretty consistently. I think now she's probably C, maybe above America Chavez, but I don't know if she's ever worth playing. Where do you think she is?
If she is C tier, I think she needs to be freaking buffed again, first and foremost. But I think if she is C tier, she is like low borderline C tier because like the amount of work you have to put into her to get her to two
Yes.
five, and even if you were to bounce her, like you still would have to like play her again, and you like have to overcommit to that beast lane, kind of like.
Yeah. So do you think she's worse
Mm.
actually than America Chavez?
I think with Chavez, you're not as limited where Angela. You have to play on Angela's lane for her to get a buff. Like if you just
Yeah.
only play two cards on Angela, she's a 2/4, and like that's still like not as crazy as like 2/6 where she used to be when she was +2. That was where
Yeah.
she was just great.
All right. I think that's fair. I'll put her actually below Chavez. The nice thing about Angel and Chavez, at least they are like Series 1 cards, so early players still get a little bit of use out of them.
Hmm.
But there may be some times where, depending on the meta, they come back in. But yeah, very, very weak. Next up, we've got Armor. Where do you have Armor?
I have armor in A tier.
I think that's
I
fair. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just the value she adds, not only to protect your cards, but to counter a lot of cards right now, especially even though you might not be seeing destroy in every single game like you may have like a couple weeks ago. I think just she adds that extra level of protection against even the meta decks we have right now with Blob and with Black Knight. Like you're still protecting those cards in case you don't get a Kyera. It is limited to one lane, but that's of course right now that's what two costs are supposed to be, is kind of limited to one lane until we of course get later on into this video where we'll go a little bit crazy. But yeah, I think she just has immense value overall right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think Armor right now, not the best spot, and KR sees a bit of replacements, but overall produces great value. A staple in Shuri decks. Could work in some different discard or even lockjaw decks. I agree. Low A tier, and Armor's consistently been pretty much near or at the top of the meta. And yeah, she can hard counter destroy. Being able to hard counter an archetype, it's very, very powerful. All right, Baron Mordo. This is a card that's obviously kind of meant for Ronin, but even in Ronin decks has never. Well, Ronin decks just haven't been too strong, and even now they're a bit better, but I'm not sure Baron Mordo even makes the cut usually. And actually, there's now a hard counter in the game too. If your opponent has Mobius, who's always going to be kind of in and out of the meta, in my opinion, you just give them a free draw, and it does not get brought up to 6 costs. So Baron Mordo isn't a great card, and it has a hard counter out there in Mobius. I'm inclined to give him low C or F. I'm not sure there's ever a reason to really play him. What are your thoughts?
I like him in low C. I think the Mobius argument definitely is something to take into account. So like it just the value you get from Baron is not really appreciated right now at the
Yeah.
moment.
And you might hit a 6 cost card and they just drew it and you didn't change the cost. Is a
Yeah.
big problem. Okay, so where do we have them in the C cost tier? Because we are ranking these by exact order. Do we have them below Chavez, above Angela? What do you think?
Yeah, I think below Chavez above Angela. I just Angela's just not in a good spot right now.
She just feels bad to play. I think her
Yeah.
stats are decent, honestly. Like becoming 2/6 isn't horrible if you have Jeff, but it just feels bad knowing.
Hmm.
All right, we've got Bucky Barnes here. This is a very early game popular destroy card, and he just simply doesn't really make the cut anymore. In almost every destroy deck, he just doesn't make the cut. There's a lot of good cards that compete. So my initial thought is C tier, like he's pretty meh, but if you played him in the destroy deck, I wouldn't laugh at that person. I would just be like, oh, it's an interesting choice. He's very replaceable. But my thought is C, maybe kind of higher in the C tier.
I definitely think higher in the C tier. I think he still adds a lot of value to especially earlier pools destroy
Yes.
decks. And then like the old, I remember one of your old favorite probably archetypes too was the old Professor X Destroyer build where you would have Bucky on another lane, you play Destroyer on another one just so you get that extra 6 power. Because I mean, he turns into a 2/6,
Yeah.
and if you do play him with Carnage or with Venom, that overall value, if it's with Carnage, could end up being 2/8 because Carnage gets the +2 from destroying Bucky,
Mm-hmm.
or it just kind of depends on that lane. But I think C tier is a good place from just because, like you said, there's so many cards that can replace Bucky at the moment, even though he does become a
Yeah.
6 power 2 cost.
Yeah, Bucky's decent. His problem is just they stuck to destroy, and there's just so much competition. But Bucky
Yeah.
himself isn't horrible. So I'd put him at the top of C tier. I'll put him above Chavez. Okay, next up, we are looking at Carnage. And this is someone you play a lot, so I'll let you take it away. I know you're a big Destroy player.
I definitely am a firm believer that Carnage is a high A tier card. Um, Not only because he's one of the most key components in a destroy type, but because of his ability, he does not consume any negative power. When he destroys negative power, he will always get a bonus. And that helps you really clear any lanes opposed to like a Venom in situations. In some situations, he's better than Venom because Venom will absorb that negative power, and Carnage is something you can kind of flex into more decks than most of these destroy cards. So I think that definitely puts him justified in an A tier situation, just because he's not just landlocked into a single archetype.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I don't play as much Destroy, so I have Carnage a bit lower as like low A or high B, but he's very good, and I would play him in my Clog decks often. I've played him in Clog when I was running Debris. He's very good just for cleaning that up, and like you mentioned, the fact that he doesn't eat the power can be very good. So coming to the tier list here for Carnage, I personally would have him lower than Armor.
Yeah,
Just
I agree.
But still, I think A tier is fair. He's basically always been a staple in every destroy deck, regardless of rank.
Hmm.
Just a nice cheap destroy. It's basically like the cheapest consistent destroy that exists. All right, and then we're looking at Cloak, who, is a card. He's got some niche uses with some Galactus shenanigans as well, and sees play in move decks, which just are not very good ever in Pool 3. So Cloak to me, not F tier. He has some uses, like he can, have a purpose, but he's stands out as C tier to me just because the decks he plays in are pretty bad. He's never really been like a strong meta card.
Yeah, I think C tier is fair. I think with his stat line, I think with 2-4, he's probably a little bit higher in C tier.
Uh
He's
huh.
getting more usage now with Phoenix Force
Yeah.
and some of those move decks with giving Hercules some actual value. But I think with the stat line being 2-4, I think he's also C tiered because your opponent can also move cards. I think that's what
Yes,
makes
that's
him
true.
different. So you can kind of get you could kind of get countered in a way, not necessarily all the time, but you always have to take into effect like, yo, I'm moving cards here, but my opponent also can. Kind of like the same argument I would have with Magic, but that's topic for another day.
Yeah, and so Cloak, would we have him below Bucky? You think?
Yeah, I'd have him below Bucky.
Moving right along, we are looking at Calling Wing, obviously tied to discard archetype, kind of like Cloak, actually a 2/4 that's completely tied to one archetype, although Cloak's made a bit more flexible. And Calling Wing traditionally hasn't made the cut in a lot of Pool 3 plus discard decks because they go kind of for these big combo, Lady Sif, just discard big stuff, bring it back with Hela. So Calling Wing seems like Cloak, maybe a bit worse to me, where I think she's C tier.
She's but like staple C tier. The stat line is just great for 2-4,
It is.
and it's a targeted discard. And I do love some targeted discard opposed to a
Yes.
random discard, but I can totally see her C tier.
Would you have her below or above Cloak?
I'd have her above Cloak.
Maybe right behind Bucky?
Yeah, I think behind Bucky's fair.
Yeah, and I agree. I think Colleen and discard cards in general are all getting a bit of a boost next month, so
Hmm.
we'll see how that changes things. Okay, next up we've got Colossus. Oh, he's an early game card that you play with Spectrum, and then once you unlock some more ongoing 2-cost cards, you basically never play Colossus again. His can't be destroyed. If he's gonna have that ability, it would have been cool as a 1-cost card because of Killmonger. It's like no one's trying to
Hmm.
destroy the 2/3. Like it's rarely works. He just sees no play outside of Pool 1, so I think he's F tier.
Yeah, he's definitely F tier. I think it's like a poor man's Luke Cage a little bit if you need it for C3 to play on like a negative location, but like no.
Yeah, would you have him above or below Adam Warlock? Because Adam Warlock sounds better, but Colossus actually maybe gets played in Pool 1. So where do you have him, above or below
You
Adam?
can actually play Colossus, so I would put Colossus
He
above
actually
Adam
adds power to the
Warlock.
board. He actually,
You don't have to freaking like sell an arm and a leg to get him to work,
yeah, you don't
opposed
have
to
to play a
like
2-0 on turn 6 and cry. Okay, now we've got Dagger, another move card, and again, move cards traditionally are just pretty weak because of the archetype. Dagger's a 2/2. She can get pretty strong. How do you rank her? I think she's kind of hard to judge just because move archetype in general has been weak.
I think just because of how big you can get Dagger if you play kind of the right way, I think she's low B tier. I think she's
Mm-hmm.
higher than a lot of the cards we have in C tier.
Yeah, I agree. I think she's low B tier. She's stuck to move, which sucks, but she does get pretty big. She could be a win condition,
Hmm.
if you get your draws right. So I agree. I put Dagger low B tier. If move ever does get really good, Dagger could easily, pop off. Okay, next up we've got Daredevil, and you can see I play a lot of Daredevil because I got this bad boy inked. One of the first cards, I think maybe the first card I bought with tokens when I got to Series 3, either him or Wong. And Daredevil's really good. I think he's pretty interesting when you first get into pool 3, or even just, if you're a more casual player, like you can still play Daredevil even if you don't see him in most meta decks. He just produces great value. Like just knowing what your opponent doing on turn 5 is great. As you get better at the game, I think he's slightly worse because he does less, but if you have less knowledge of the game, he gives you more information. I think Daredevil is better for worse players than he is for good players because he's helping you gain knowledge. And I still play him every now and then. I've played him in clog decks. I play him just in tempo control. He's got the most intimidating effect, in my opinion. Turn 5, if your opponent's playing Daredevil, you hate yourself. Even if you're winning the game, you just hate it that they can see it and you have no idea what's happening. But where do you place Daredevil on a tier list for in terms of strength?
So you might call me crazy here.
Uh-oh. Oh, this is going to
Um,
be good.
so I think if you really look at it and take a step back, Daredevil is A tier for sure. I think there is potential for Daredevil to be close to S tier, not necessarily putting him in there, but if you look at how pivotal turn 5 is in a
Yes.
majority of matchups, if you are playing a control archetype, and like what you're saying too, if someone is playing Daredevil and they see you play their card, like you play a card, and then they snap on
Oh,
you,
it's the worst feeling.
it's literally the worst feeling. And I think just the reaction you get from someone snapping on you with a Daredevil,
Uh-huh.
and is it going to be a Professor X? Is it going to be a Gamora? Is it going to be a Leech? Is it going to be whatever it is? Like, I don't think Daredevil is played enough, honestly,
I
at this
agree.
point right
I
now.
completely agree. I'm glad you're on the Daredevil hype train because, yeah, I agree. He doesn't see much play. So I thought maybe I was giving a hot take here, but I love Daredevil. And yeah, he does something sweet. And you know what he does? I'm not sure there's any other card. There's maybe a few, but no one does it to the extent that helps you bluff. Like Daredevil
Hmm.
is one of the few cards in Snap because it's honestly hard to bluff in Snap. It's usually not worth it. Daredevil is one of the few cards that will actually help you bluff and get cubes. And the way he works with the cube system is very unique. He's one of a kind. So I agree. I'll put him high A. Maybe at the
Hmm.
end we'll review it if we want to bump him up to S, but I think for now high A is fair. All right, then we've got Doctor Strange, somewhat recently changed to become a 2-cost card. He's a 2/3. That's pretty good. Still tied to move, but now, he does see playing like Phoenix Force stuff. I'd say he's probably B, low B or high C. What do you think about Doctor Strange?
What's cool about Doctor Strange, opposed to some other move cards, like for cards that are in play, opposed to like being able to like Iron Fist and Ghost Spider and stuff,
Yeah.
Doctor Strange is a targeted move.
Uh huh.
So I think that definitely increases his value. I think low B,
Would you put him above or below Dagger?
below Dagger.
All
Yeah,
right,
it's
next
really
up,
weird.
we got Domino. Similar to Quicksilver that we've talked about in our 1-cost tier list. Domino, you draw on tier 2, it's guaranteed 3 power, but you lose a draw. Essentially, you're hurting the odds of drawing other cards in your deck because it's guaranteed you draw Domino on 2. And I think she's a pretty clear F tier because once you get out of Series 1, you pretty quickly realize that not being able to draw anything else on turn 2 and hurting your draws is bad, and that 3 power isn't missed. It's very replaceable. Do we have her above Colossus, below Colossus?
We have her below Colossus.
And another one that just has gotten nerfed to absolute doo doo. We've got Elsa. She's now a 2/3, and it will give +2 power instead of +3 like originally on release, but only 2 power to a card that fills her location. So you basically just get it once. She becomes a 2/5 unless you played Jeff and moved him out and played something else. Do we have her in C around Angela, or do you think she's maybe still in the B range? How do you think Elsa ranks?
I think C. I'm just so upset with the change. I would say please buff, but I think reasonably
Yeah,
C tier. Probably above Baron just because it affects another card and like you can kind of move that card. I mean, you could do the same thing with
true.
Angela, but like the effect goes
Yeah,
off
the power
multiple
goes to that
times.
card.
Yeah.
Okay, then we got Falcon. Falcon is a pretty good card. He's basically just used to play in bounce decks, but I mean, there's like two cards in the game that bounce stuff. It's Falcon and Beast, so Falcon is like half of that equation. Just returns your one cost cards, which can be good. He's basically just a staple in bounce decks, so I think that at
Hmm.
least puts him in the B tier. And I would say he's B or high B. I'm not sure I'd put him at A, but I think he's just solid. He's just a good card if you're playing that kind of archetype.
I think high B for sure. I think not only is he good just like in a flat bounce deck, I think because if you look at the move archetype as well, and a lot of those big moving cards being
Oh
one
yeah,
cost,
Human Torch.
and like being able to also bounce back, Iron Fist and Ghost Spider adds a lot of value too, especially if you're trying to freaking pilot Hercules right now, because just being able to do that stuff over and over again is really useful. I think high B totally.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'll put him above Dagger and Doctor Strange then. Wow, our B tier right now is almost all move. It's got Falcon, who synergizes with
Hmm.
some move, but it's funny how it's shaping up when you look at it alphabetically. The C tier is like all these cards that got nerfed.
Literally.
And it's crazy how that works. They go from S or A tier to C. Okay, next up we've got Goose, and Goose is, in my opinion, probably another B tier card. I used to play Goose a lot because I used to play a lot of Silver Surfer. It was like the first meta deck I had when I started playing, and I got into Pool 3. Goose is a card a bit like Iceman, where sometimes you don't realize how good it hits because it limits your opponent, and so you don't necessarily know what would have happened if you didn't play Goose. So sometimes it's hard to see her value.
I think like what you said with this card being so like it's just right now with everyone playing big cards like that's what's happening. Yes, you have some enabling cards which we'll talk about later
Yeah.
that kind of decrease the cost that kind of like counter Goose in a way. I think it helps in a lot of aspects against like a blob deck. You can't play blob in a Goose lane ever. And I think C2 is also really really good right now,
Yeah.
like really really good. So
Yeah.
I think the argument for high B is there, and I think
Above or below Falcon?
above Falcon.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you alluded to Zabu there. I think if Zabu wasn't in the game, Goose is significantly better. I think the
Yes.
Zabu dilemma is it's a big factor for Goose that a lot of games she just has less decks to counter. A lot of times it's like a miss. If your opponent's playing Zabu, then you kind of just lost the 2-drop battle there. Okay, next up we're looking at Havoc. You can't see my booster count for Havoc, but I have 0 boosters.
Oh,
I
I can see it.
unlocked them, but oh, you can. Okay, on the stream, the people watching can't.
Okay.
I've unlocked him, but I've clearly never played him, or I have for weekend missions. I didn't get boosters though. Where's our booster targeting? Um, Havoc is, he had very low expectations coming out. I'd say he's a bit better than the original expectations. I'm not sure he's like good or strong, but I would say low B or a high C. Maybe he hasn't found a meta deck yet, and he hasn't been out too long.
So I've actually played a decent amount of Havoc.
Okay.
I've played him in a Sarah Hitmonkey deck,
Oh yeah.
and playing him on 6 has felt really really good.
Yeah.
Or playing him out a little bit early, kind of depending. But I think definitely a high C tier. I don't think he's F tier
I agree.
by any
Yeah.
means. I think you definitely you have to think when playing this card.
So I think maybe we'll put him above Bucky. The reason I say that is he's very unique. I would not be surprised if at some point he finds a home where only Havoc works, right? Like you could not replace him. If a deck comes out and he's like a staple, there's no way to replace Havoc. Okay. And then let's look up. Yeah, we got some big hit. All of the good 2-cost cards, it turns out, come along later. We've got Hazmat, who has been these stats for a while, but lost a lot when Luke Cage lost his global protection. That if you were playing Hazmat, you wanted Luke Cage, so Hazmat only hit your opponent's cards. And now that doesn't happen. Honestly, I used to play a lot of Hazmat. I love this variant. I had a good amount of boosters. I've completely stopped playing her. I've stopped seeing her. I could not tell you the last time I saw a Hazmat that wasn't randomly generated. I not sure F tier. Maybe, I don't know. I'd say C easily. What do you think?
So I've actually been playing a lot of Hazmat this past like week and a
Okay.
half.
Oh, that's right. I saw you playing it
Um,
on stream. Yeah.
I think she's definitely C tier, like no question about that.
Yeah.
But I think what is so great about Hazmat right now that your opponents literally forget is she can work well with Annihilus. You can
Yes, that's a
still
big
do the
plus.
debris package with Annihilus. Yes, it stinks that like the rocks don't go straight over anymore with Annihilus with 0, but if you get them to that -1, and there are some other ways I teched it, the problem is Hazmat still is probably below most of these cards in C tier. She's probably below Angela just because of Luke Cage. Yes, she is universal, but she is so
She's
niche.
hard to
Like
use.
it's
She's hard
just
to
yeah.
use. All right, Invisible Woman is a card I personally love. I wish I had it ink split, but I've split her a bunch of times. No inked yet, sad. And I used to play this card a lot in my ongoing, just raw power ongoing tribunal decks, where I just stick a bunch of power behind her. She saw a lot of play in Modok Hella decks, and she used to be really, really good in those kind of cases. But now Eliath does basically hard counter Invisible Woman, and that's just a big problem that she has a hard counter that exists, and Eliath sees a decent amount of play. So I can't give her A tier. I think because of that, she is a bit of a liability right now, although she still can produce value. I'd say B still. Where do you have Invisible Woman?
I definitely think she's B tier. I think there is a 100% chance of an argument for her to be S tier before the Eliath change. But
Yeah,
post Eliath change, I think she definitely has a home in B tier, but I still think she's probably top of B tier.
I'd put her
Just
above
because
Goose.
of
Do you
value.
agree?
Yes, top of B tier right there. Not like top of B tier overall. I just think yes, top
Yeah.
of B tier what we have currently.
Yeah, I agree. She used to feel like really amazing. And another card, actually, similar to Daredevil,
Hmm.
you have information that your opponent doesn't. You have multiple turns of these plays. And that's how, I first played it with Tribunal when he was still 6'6". Literally nobody knew what was behind there. They don't know I'm stacking an Iron Man onslaught. Like, very unique ability, has bluffing potential, great at stealing cubes because of the information game. Very powerful. But yeah, the Alive change really hurts her. Um, okay. Okay, we're finally getting to some good two-cost cards. I think everybody knows Jeff. I don't think I need to say too much. I'm just going to say he's simply S tier, and he's been S tier, and he's been the best two-cost card in the game, basically since he was released, minus maybe if you thought Elsa was better at some point. Is there anything you want to say on Jeff besides S tier?
Definitely S tier. I think there was an argument for him to be the best two drop in the game since
Yes.
his release. I know some people always put him above the last card that we're going to be ranking, but I've always thought the other card was better. But that's
Yeah.
personally my take, and I think he's going to be a staple S tier card, just like one of the cards coming out in March is going to be an S tier card for their entire life cycle as well.
Yeah,
And
Jeff.
that's War Machine, by the way. It's going to be
Yeah, with his
absolutely S
current
tier.
current data mine ability, but Jeff has
Yeah.
always been a staple since he came out. He's been tier one,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure there's a more consistent tier one card
No.
because Jeff hasn't been nerfed. And the other very consistent tier one cards like Elsa just got nerfed really quick. Jeff has gone a long time as arguably the best two cost card in the game. It's
Yep.
insane how good he is. And now we've got Kingpin. So now we're looking at more good two cost cards. Kingpin
You have
recently.
Venomized Kingpin too?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't even buy too many Venomized variants, but I got it. And it's a great skin. And Kingpin used to be a 3/4 that killed a card that moved there. Now he's a 2/3 that gives a card -2 power. So he's cheaper. The ability is better, in my opinion, because it doesn't only work on turn 6. And so if your opponent just fills their board by the end of the game, you can still get use of him. He is, in my opinion, worse than Craven. Craven gets +2 when you move a card to his lane, or when your opponent moves a card to his lane. Kingpin does not get any benefit when you move a card to his lane. He only hits your opponent's card, so he's essentially getting +2 that way. So in my opinion, he's like a knockoff Craven. But if you can play two Cravens in a deck in a way, that's pretty good. I have Kingpin as B tier. He's felt really good when I've played him. Kind of niche still, but I have him as B.
it's really interesting when you come to like cards right now, especially. I think Kingpin is a better conquest card than a ladder card. But I think he definitely is B tier. If that makes sense. Like with conquest, you know what your opponent's playing. You know what they might be trying to set up.
Yeah.
So Kingpin's a little bit easier to set up in conquest than ladder. But I definitely think with his new ability, he's B tier. I have him below dagger.
All right, well, look at that alphabetically. Craven comes right after, and I said I think Kingpin is kind of a worse Craven. I do think Craven just adds more power to the board.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'd say Craven low A or B, and the reason is Craven has worked in move decks, but also Silky Smooth. He's seen good value, so I think Craven easily higher B or low A.
I think he's low A because I think most games at your worst, Craven's a 2/6.
Yeah,
Which is freaking fantastic because like there's no downfall of him being 2/6 like some of these other cards that have
right.
more than five or more power. And I think most time you get him in like that 8 range. I think that's like the bread and butter, so he doesn't get Shang-Chi'd. I just think he's just freaking nasty.
I'd put him maybe right below Carnage. What do you think?
Yeah, I think below Carnage.
Next up, we've got Lizard. Good card. He's a 2/5. If your opponent has 4 cards there, he becomes a 2/1. But now you basically play Lizard with Shuri decks. You hit him with 0 or with Enchantress, or you just play him in like the good cards, big stats deck that's going around, which also will have Enchantress and Zabu. And so you basically you use another card to make him a 2/5 guaranteed once you hit him with
Hmm.
Enchantress. So I'd say he's good. I think he's easily B tier. What do you think?
Yeah, I think raw stats wise B tier, and it forces your opponent to have to play 4 cards onto his lane to decrease his value.
Yeah, and honestly, it's not worth it because you know they're playing Enchantress,
Yeah,
which can be good if you play ongoing cards on his lane. Then yeah, you're getting cracked. Where in the B tier do we have him?
probably below Falcon. I think like Falcon just adds way too much value, and I think with
Yeah.
this next card too, that's also if you don't have an Enchantress, this next card also helps with Lizard.
Oh, okay. We are looking at Luke Cage. My goodness, and look at this variant. I love this frame break. This is golden.
It's amazing.
And so Luke Cage, he's one that you kind of alluded to. He used to have universal protection when he first got changed to. Yeah, he was really strong, considered very strong tech card. And now I've stopped playing him. He's really hard to pull off. It's just one lane. He's a 2/3. I don't know. He's one of those cards that for me just feels bad every time I see him. Where would you place him?
I think since he's 2/3 now, and the way C3 is playing really well, I think he's still a B tier card because his ability still works well. But he's not as crazy good as he used to be for sure. Like he used to be insane, a hard counter to high Evo. I think he probably goes below Dagger.
We've got Mantis. She's a 2/3 now, but your opponent needs to play there to draw a card. This looks like F tier or bottom of C to me. What do you think?
I think it's probably so like it's bottom. I want to say it's bottom C because you draw a card from your opponent's deck, so like they don't get that draw anymore.
That's true. As a use, technically.
But you have to play that on like this the right lane. So I think that's still like
Let's stick her at the top of F for now.
yeah.
I'm not sure
I don't
there's
know.
any reason to play her, even in like a Loki deck. You don't play her, and
No.
that's where she'd only see play. Master Mold works in a Ronin deck. That's about it. Bottom of C somewhere in, or bottom of B somewhere in the C tier. Maybe C tier is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe C because it's so specific. But like the ability's cool because it like helps clog your opponent. But like
Yeah, he's never worked yet. Well, is the problem. He's never been like a super strong.
yes, I got master mode. I gotta play him now. And like it's just like okay.
Yeah, where in C tier would you have him?
Might have him above Baron.
I think that's fair. Okay, next up, we've got Maximus, who's now a 2/6. He's in the good stats deck. He screams low A or somewhere in the B tier for me. If you play him on turn 6, it's a 2/6 with no downside, and that's pretty cool. Where do you have Maximus?
I think Max is definitely A tier, and I think the like you play him turn 6 like you're saying too, or you can even play him on like a turn 5
Yep,
against like Thanos right now too. If you're pushing as many cards as possible out of your opponent's deck, so their blob is smaller,
that's true.
I think he has good value right now.
Where in A? We have him above, below Craven?
Probably above Craven, just because the raw stats there. Like Craven, you have to move 2 cards to get him to two
Yeah,
six. Max is
Maximus, you just play.
there.
All right, Medusa. I love playing Medusa. I play her in tempo decks. She basically guarantees you have tempo coming into turn 3. She doesn't even play on the middle still, but a 2/5 is not bad. Maybe solid B tier.
Yeah, I think solid B tier for sure. 2-5, you just can't beat that. When she was 2-4, I was like,
Yeah,
but
no,
2-5,
2/5
she's
made big
great.
difference. Where in B? Above Lizard, below Lizard?
Honestly, below Lizard, I still think with Lizard, you have to play on that lane for him to be decreased. So
Mirage sees play in Loki decks. That's about it. Maybe another B tier card.
yeah,
Lower
B
B.
because it gives you intel as well. So like you know
It
what your lowest
does.
card your
And it
opponent
gives
has. You can
plus
get like a
2.
2-6 or a 2-5 Jeff.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
she can come in clutch.
I have her above Medusa.
Then we've got Mr. Sinister, basically sees play in Patriot and C2. He's okay. B or C.
I think as of right now, he's probably high C tier. I think back when it was the Absorber Man freaking Brood decks, he was better because that was just freaking crazy. So actually, with that right there, I think he's better than Kingpin. He's better than Doctor Strange. He's better than Luke Cage. I think he's probably low B tier.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. I'll put him B tier. And again, Patriot,
yeah.
circles back every now and then. All right, we've got Mojo, who he's okay. He's a bit better than he used to be because if he is a solo card in Space Throne, he does get his buff. Clog decks have been getting a little worked recently, but he does do well with Jean Grey. And he can get to 8 power, which is insane for a 2 cost. To me, he's B or C.
Yeah, I think with his newest rework for like Space Throne and stuff, 2-8? Are you serious? Like that's solid.
So we have him
Yeah.
high C or low B? What are you thinking?
Top of C tier.
Top C. I'd put him above Havoc, maybe?
Yeah.
Morbius. I mean, if you're playing discard, you're probably playing Morbius. There are a few big combo decks that don't use him, but he gets really big for a 2 cost card. Definitely staple in a lot of discard. Easily A or B for me. What are your thoughts?
I think he's A tier. I think just because of how big this card can get. Yes, he's super niche to an archetype, but like if you're super niche but you get so huge, it's like
Yeah, it's
Dracula.
like
Like
Carnage.
it's
It's
just
kind of like a Carnage.
yeah. Or that's actually the better example is Carnage because he's 2 costs. But yeah.
Where in A tier would you put him?
I put him above Max.
Then we've got Multiple Man. Move decks, he's whatever. Phoenix Force loves him. Where would you place Multiple Man?
So with the newest patch to Phoenix Force, I think Multiple Man might be bottom A tier. I know that's crazy, but
That is
since Phoenix
crazy.
Force now you can move the duplicate copies of Multiple Man, not just the single Phoenix Force.
Yeah.
You can add that stat line pretty much anywhere. That's crazy.
Yeah, I agree. Feels bottom A, top of B. He can win games. Like if you do need to hit him with Phoenix Force, so it's a bit inconsistent. You need to draw it and kill it and play it with Phoenix Force, but he can be a win condition. So I agree. We'll put him at the bottom of A. Inconsistent, but could be really powerful. And then we've got Mysterio, who I used to play a lot when Sarah like Miracle decks were really popular with old Angela and even Kitty Pryde. Mysterio kind of comes in and out of the meta. Basically, if Sarah decks are around with cheaper cards, Mysterio comes back because he works so well with Bishop and Hitmonkey. And when the Sarah decks kind of go away, Mysterio kind of goes away. So I'd put him maybe in the B tier.
I definitely think he's B tier. As I was saying, like I've been having fun with a Sarah Hitmonkey deck, and I've been
Yeah.
playing Mysterio. I think what also establishes him as a solid B tier card overall is your opponent has to account for the
Yeah.
clone power, and only you know where it is.
It's a knowledge thing, yeah.
And he was also better with old Elsa because
Yes.
literally, and like with
Yes.
Forge too, you can still play if you just know about your clone because the farthest left clone gets the plus power anyways. You can always get a clone to be like +3 that way, or plus
Yeah.
2 because Forge is +2, right?
Where in the 2 cost would you have him?
After Luke Cage.
We've got Okoye. You play with Sebastian Shaw, but
Or
she's
Blob.
or Blob. But usually she doesn't make the cut. I think C tier. I don't think she's F. I think C tier is pretty fair. What do we think?
I definitely think C tier. I think she's gonna also do some work with Beta Ray Bill, and I mean she does combo with Black Panther, but it's like you have to be so specific and not have those cards. It's just a C tier for me. I don't think she needs like a rework.
Yeah, yeah. I think if you buff her, you just make her like a 2-3 base stats. Where in C
Yeah,
tier do you have her? Do you have her below Chavez?
I have her above Chavez
Maybe right
because it
above
affects
Chavez.
every card opposed to just your next card by +2.
Next up, we've got Psylocke, and Psylocke always kind of has some home. Whether it's a lot of times it's like a Thanos or Lockjaw list. Used to be in Mr. Negative. She did get a bit replaced there. So she's gotten kind of outcompeted with some other 2-cost cards, but she still has a home in like Thanos at times. I'd say maybe it used to be A tier, but now I'd say B tier just because she's got some more competition.
I think she's maybe top of B tier. I think what really is interesting for us is we are more Series 4, more Series 5 complete. But people who don't have some of these other 2-cost cards that are coming up, Psylocke is like the poor man's version of
Zabu,
those
yeah.
cards.
Do you put her above, below Invisible Woman?
I put her above Invisible Woman.
Okay, well, we talked about how it was good timing for this one because Quake used to be trash. She would just randomly shuffle the locations, and now she does not. She's still a 2-3, but she will swap the positions of the other two locations. So she doesn't get rid of any. She will not do anything really with Limbo. She doesn't really help get rid of it like Legion does. But you play her on one lane, and you know the other two lanes are swapping. And I was winning a bunch of games this morning with her. She feels really, really good. I think we'll have to see how it plays out. It's still pretty new. I think she's definitely feels A tier already.
I definitely think she's A tier. I think her ability, she's like a pocket Legion, but you can tech
Yes.
her into more decks because she costs less.
Yes, I agree. Pocket
Oh,
Legion, that's like perfect description.
yeah, I think above armor because armor limits you to one lane. Quake affects all three lanes pretty
Yeah, and
much
the
because
biggest
you're like
thing
this
to
one's
me,
staying.
Quake, is that if you've got the Nexus, Borrowed No Name, other stuff, you play her on turn 6. She can't just win. She can like literally steal cubes from your opponent as a 2-cost card, and that's very, very rare for a 2-cost card to make a huge play on turn 6, which we know steals more cubes than making a huge play on any other turn. Then we've got Ravana, very weak on release, was like a 3-2 or something, and then she became a 2-1, and now she's a 2-3 while Mobius got nerfed. Works great in Mr. Negative decks, works great in just like ongoing decks with Iron Man and Mystique, just cheap decks with some clog potential or Galactus stuff with the goblins. I think Ravana is A or B tier. I mean, energy cheat is like one of the most powerful things in the game, so that makes me want to put Ravana in the A tier. What are your thoughts?
I think she is the top card in A tier. I think what she enables, like you said, you hit it right in the head. Ongoing with Iron Man, the goblins. You can play Ravonna and Patriot, and she works really well too.
Professor X, the new Professor X.
Professor
You basically
X,
need her
like
now if you want to do that.
so. I think you can even use her with Shuri. I think she enables a lot of these cards that you think maybe definitely need help or maybe even consider are bad. I think just her stat line, you're like, oh, this card is 0 power. You use her with Darkhawk if you don't have Zabu. Like, I just think she's opened up another just energy cheating kind of card. I think it's really good.
Scarlet Witch, she's a RNG. I don't love playing her because I hate the RNG, but 2-3 gets rid of the location, has killed countless limbos in her day.
I think just because of her ability and raw power, you definitely still put her low B tier.
I would put her maybe below Medusa, or what are your thoughts?
I think below Medusa is solid.
You can tell I play a lot of Scorpion because I've been splitting him a bunch. Where do we have Scorpion? I think he's not as good as he used to be, but now with Luke Cage nerf, it means he's decent with high Evo, Abomination Shell.
I think he's a high C tier
C?
card.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think even with the high Evo shell, depending on when you play Scorpion, like you kind of
Yeah.
have to slam A bomb down by like 4 or 5. Because if you don't, A bomb just loses value because your opponent's drawing more. Because like in the Thanos meta right now, Your blob gets hit by -1, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, I think C's fair. He used to see a good amount of play. Like again with Silver Surfer, your opponent's playing Sarah stuff, you hit everything. But it's been a while, and there's just way better options. He's kind of lost that like general good 2 cost spot where it's like, oh, I need 2 costs. Let me put in Scorpion. He's lost that, and I'm not
Hmm.
sure it's coming back if they don't change him.
Probably above Okoye. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, we've got Sentinel. Could work in some Loki decks. Works with Collector, Quinjet, Dino, and good early game card. And even with Sarah decks, they've traditionally used Sentinel every now and then. Seems like low B or C tier to me. Cerebro 3 also uses him. What are your thoughts?
I'd say just like firm, being able to play a 2 drop and always being able to play a 2 drop every turn.
Yeah,
I'd say low B.
yeah, and it helps out if your turn 4 is looking bad and you can squeeze two cost cards.
Hmm.
Where in the B tier would you have him?
Probably above Luke Cage.
Put him right below Mr. Sinister.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Shadow King. Well, now that Kyera's out, Shang-Chi is even worse, which means Shadow King is even better. He's relied on even more, and he can work against Blob, although you need to predict where it's coming down and not have priority. Shadow King's very powerful. I think as a floor, he's A tier. Some people would argue he's S tier, and especially with Luke Cage not having the global protection. Shadow King is like some of the best removal in the game, and it's for a 2 cost card. So, what do you have him as?
I think there's definitely an argument for S tier, but I think he's more like a solidified top 3, top 2 cards in A tier.
All right, for now, I'll put him right below Ravana.
Yeah.
But I agree, Ravana and Shadow King. There are arguments for S tier. Shocker. Well, in High Evo Shinnot right now, he sees play. He's a staple when he's evolved, so that at least kind of puts him in the B tier range. And we will also look at him as just his base stats when he's not played with High Evo. He sees playing some Patriot. So it's mainly the High Evo thing that carries it for me. And because he's C played High Evo and that deck has kind of been a staple, right now it's really strong, but just in general, there's always like a High Evo deck in the meta. I give Shocker a B tier.
High Evo, he's definitely B, like middle to high B because he enables you
Yeah.
in such a way. But I think we got to kind of weigh it a little bit based on
Well, he's dual.
knowability.
It's like a card that fits in multiple decks, right? You can play him in
Yeah.
Patriot, or you can play him in High Evo, and it's really just High Evo is where you see a lot of play. But the fact that he sees that he's a bit of a staple in like a top meta deck that kind of goes in
Yeah.
and out of the meta,
I think
right below
Mysterio's
Mysterio.
better. Yeah. Because Mysterio in Patriot, I feel like gives you more value
And
than
Mysterio's
Shocker,
a bit
too.
more flexible. All right, we've got Silk. Silk was pretty underwhelming in terms of
Hmm.
people's perception when she first came out, and she didn't get buffed or nerfed or anything. She was always a 2/5. People just realized you could start playing her, and she worked well, worked great with Craven. Even without Craven, I've played her in tempo decks. Just having 5 power on the board that won't get reduced, whereas Medusa needs to be middle. Lizard could get reduced if you don't, hit him with Enchantress. Silk, she bounces around, but 5 power, great for priority. I'd put her in B. What do you think?
I think a solid B tier. I think she's like at least middle, if not a little bit upper middle, because the only way to reduce her stats is with Kingpin now. So I probably put her right below Falcon.
Yeah, I agree. I was just gonna say right above Lizard because I prefer her over Lizard. Star Lord is another potential 2/5. Kind of has the Mantis treatment. He's probably the hardest to get to 2/5 out of Lizard, Silk, and Medusa. Maybe not F tier because 2/5 is good stats, but easily C tier.
I think if he is C tier, he's top more towards top end C tier because the way you play like these Guardians cards now
He does work in the Guardian
is
deck. That's true.
like a control list with either like a Storm, a Jean Grey, or like just guessing where your opponent's going to play. But I think if you look at some of the locations that are really dominant right now too, like a Adware Energy location or Fill This kind of location, you can text Starlord in there to get a nice little cheesy 2/5. So I think that kind of puts him above a lot of these cards in C tier, probably top of C tier.
All right, then we have Swarm, who has not made the cut for a lot of discard decks recently. I think he makes a bit of a resurgence coming up, but we don't know what that's going to look like. Where do we have Swarm? Do we have it B? Do we have it C? What are your thoughts?
With Mobius not being as dominant in the meta right now,
That's true.
I think you can argue Swarm is B tier because a 0-3 is really good. And with the resurgence of discard, which is going to happen towards this next week, which actually is tomorrow,
Yeah, that's
and
true.
next month, I think you're going to be seeing a lot more Swarm because there's going to be a lot of cards your people are going to be wanting to discard.
He is always going to have decent potential in a discard deck. And so for that, I agree. He's bottom of B tier. I think Morbius coming out, even when he's super popular played or not, just having a hard counter that exists is a bit tough. It means
Hmm.
Swarm will basically never reach like great heights. If he ever gets played too much, people play Mobius and
Hmm.
he gets hard countered, and that feels bad. So I would put him lower in B tier. Where do you think?
Might put him above Scarlet Witch.
All right, next up we've got the Collector. Oof, if only we filmed this like a week or two ago. The Collector basically just got shafted. He no longer gets a boost when Loki replaces your hand. Loki now transforms your hand, and the cards like are new, but they don't enter your hand the same way. So they basically just made it so they don't work together. So
Hmm.
the Collector lost all of the synergy. That was the reason he was getting played in the Loki deck and got really strong. So Loki's still pretty good. The Collector is not. You basically have no reason to play him in pool 3, besides if you do some wonky, discard swarm stuff like we mentioned. Um, is he C tier now? Because he lost his really main synergy in the meta?
I think he probably is C tier. I think you can still get Collector fairly decently sized. I just think he
Yeah.
doesn't get as huge to A tier as he was with Loki, but like you can still get him up to like a 2-6 or like a 2-8 with,
Yeah. Yeah.
Moon Girl and all this other these comboing and stuff, but he's not the same as he used to be. Yeah, I'd put him below oh no, I put him above Star Lord.
Both starter. Yeah, I think that's fair. 2 cards left. We are looking at Wolverine. You are the Destroy King. I will let you take it away.
I think Wolverine is probably I think Wolverine's more A tier. I know he's you have to play him kind of like specifically in a destroy deck, but I think with also the discard just like text there that enables you to play more Wolverine, have him jump down on a location you're not able to get to in either destroy or in discard, and with him adding extra power every single time he is destroyed, you feed your null, you feed your venom, you pray to RNGesus that Wolverine lands in the spot you need him to.
I agree. I think A is fine. I would say lower A tier.
I put him above Craven, but I don't put him above Max.
All right. Lastly, I wish we had a tier below S and A that's just called Z tier, and it's strictly for Zabuti because Zabu's a great card. When he first came out last year, literally like a year ago, last January, he was the season pass card. Absolutely busted. He cost 3. He gave your 4 cost cards -2. It was absolutely busted ramp, and they were just crazy combos. Then he got nerfed, and he's one of the few cards I think that has been OP, got nerfed, significant nerf, and still really good. Like Loki's been nerfed, but like kind of barely, and he's still good. Zabu, I think it seemed like a significant nerf. He used to give him -2, now he gives him -1. Like that's big, but he's still so good. He was that cracked when he came out. Like one of the most busted cards ever, I think, is like a general consensus. So I think Zabu is S tier. You do want to have at least 2 to 3 forecast cards. It is a bit of a requirement, and if you don't get him down on turn 2, it feels kind of bad. Like it is harder to squeeze him in later than Jeff. So I'd put him S tier, but behind Jeff.
I think he's definitely S tier, and I think you nailed it on the head. I still put Zabu above Jeff, but if we go with the overall consensus, I think you have a valid argument about him being lower than Jeff. So I'll agree that he's lower than Jeff for this video. But I just think being able to play 2 4 drops on 6, and then potentially play 4 4 drops in a game with Zabu is just
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, I agree. I think he's really strong, and yeah, you can argue it both ways. For me, I think you do have to build a specific way when you're
Hmm.
deck building with Zabu, and usually, your opponent sees Zabu down, or sometimes your opponent thinks they want to close lane, and Jeff comes in turn 6 to steal those cubes. And again, there's very few 2-drops that could steal cubes, like win a game on turn 6. It's really rare. So
Yeah.
you're okay with me putting Zabu behind Jeff?
Yeah, I think it would be like if our meta was more based like on like Miss Marvel was last season. I think Zabu had more value last season than he does this season.
And like you mentioned, kind of, Miss Marvel nerf hurt Zabu. If a 4-cost card gets hit, it could hurt Zabu. If Darkhawk gets hit, even when Blob came out, that hurts
Hmm.
Darkhawk. That indirectly hurts Zabu. Jeff just stays in the meta. Like decks,
Yep.
get more popular, they get nerfed, they change. Jeff still just always sees play. Like he does not care about the deck. He fits into anything. He doesn't care about the meta. He goes where he wants, and that's to the top of the tier list every single month. It's pretty ridiculous. Are you happy with this tier list? Is there anything you would change?
I might move Dagger down to below Luke Cage. And I don't know. I think I might move Multiple Man and move Dagger. Honestly, I
I
think I
was
might
gonna
move
say
Dagger down.
move multiple man to B. I was gonna say that.
Yeah, I think Multiple Man to B and Dagger to more lower B. But I think Multiple Man we put kind of right beside Swarm.
I would.
Or
He
I
does.
just
He does weaker
there's better.
Phoenix Force still.
Yes.
Right
Yeah, right
here.
there.
Yeah, I'm happy with it. It's another good list. So thank you again for joining me for another tier list video, Tuccrr. We will definitely get through the rest of the costs. And if you want to
Mm-hmm.
find Tuccrr, he streams all the time. He's the pirate king of streaming over on Twitch. I will link his links and socials down in the description for this video. If you did enjoy it, please remember to like and subscribe. And Tuccrr, you just want to say goodbye to the fans?
Just thank you guys for watching this video. It's always a blast to be hanging out with the Docty. But yeah, this is always so much fun, especially when Doc and I come together to kind of do this because we pick each other's brain. At some point, at the end of this year, hopefully, Docty and I are going to be making a huge tier list video with pretty much. I think we're going to do all the cards in one video. Like we're going to have to sit down for it. It's going to be a while, like a
It's gonna
long
take so
video,
long.
but we're gonna rank it all, and it's gonna be worthwhile seeing how it kind of. Or we might just do like the top cards from each each cost and put them on a list.
All right, well, you heard it here first. The inside scoop of what's coming later this year from me and Tuccrr. So thank you everyone for watching, and stay positive. I'll see you next time.